Good afternoon and welcome, CityBiz viewers. I'm Chris Abell, co-founder and technology lead at the Maryland Apprenticeship Connector, or as we fondly call it, MAC. At MAC, we're dedicated to strengthening and growing Maryland's youth apprenticeship ecosystem. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Bobby Keener, a visionary leader in workforce development and CEO of CTEWorkforce. Bobby has been at the forefront of developing and implementing innovative solutions to bridge skills gaps and prepare the next generation of workers for the demands of today's industries. In our conversation, we will delve into the current landscape of workforce development in Maryland, the power of apprenticeships, and the new partnership between MAC and CTE Workforce. Thank you all again for joining us. Now let's dive in. Bobby, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Chris. Glad to be here.
Excellent. So we're going to just jump in, Bobby. Workforce development is a critical issue across the nation, with Maryland feeling the pinch as we see significant skills gaps in key industries like cybersecurity, project management, and such. Will you share your insights on the current landscape of workforce development and why innovative solutions like apprenticeships are crucial at this time?
Yeah, so what we're seeing in the workforce landscape is that, and then we've all heard it, and it goes back many years, but we say, hey, we have all these critical jobs that we need to fill. We have all these positions, roles, and we don't have enough folks that are coming into those roles to fill them. And that hurts, our companies, hurts our society, hurts our economy, everything in between. Now, that being said, on the other flip side of the coin, we're also talking about how, we have all these folks that are not able to get jobs. They're not able to necessarily get the jobs they want. Even if they can get a job, it's not necessarily a high performing job. And, so there's obviously something there where if we can get those two groups connected, we can really make a difference for both of them. At CTE Workforce, we firmly believe that, if you give people an opportunity and you give them support to take advantage of that opportunity, then they can do almost anything. So getting those people the opportunity and support so that through apprenticeship specifically to be able to fill those jobs is really going to help these employers and help us all, quite honestly, help our society, help our economy.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point. And I think the other key thing with apprenticeships is there's sort of a built-in training plan right
Yes,
there with it. So,
that's right.
if an employer is, trying to onboard someone and maybe they don't have an onboarding process in place,
That's right.
they could use apprenticeship as a way, sort of as a already built-in way to get some of that accomplished.
Yeah, the beautiful thing about apprenticeship, unlike sometimes internships are structured, sometimes they're not. But the beautiful thing about apprenticeship, it's always structured. You always have that, you know what you're going to learn, the competencies that you're going to attain, which align to that role you're going to do, and you track those along the way to make sure that that person is getting those. So it's not a, hey, I'm going to try to eat the elephant in one bite. It's like I get this competency today. I'm going to learn this, next week, next month, and we're always going to be looking at that and making sure that they have that support so that they can continue to do that and continue to grow until they get to that end of that apprenticeship when they are that professional and can do that job that these employers need.
That's excellent. So next, I wanted to dive into why Mac and CT Workforce decided to work together. Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on sort of what, after our conversations. I'll preface this by saying Bobby and I met a handful of times before we even decided to work together. I think we align really well in terms of our method of partnership. So yeah, talk to me a little bit about why you thought this would be a good fit for your organization.
Yeah, one is we have a lot of experience in this. We've been doing apprenticeships for a number of years. We've had probably about 12 registered apprenticeships in technology, healthcare, working in the construction sector as well. So a lot of experience in workforce. Me personally, I used to be on the IT Advisory Council in Virginia for education and workforce initiatives. Did a lot of workforce initiatives when I was with the Department of Ed in Virginia as well. So a lot of that has informed me on what we need to do. But when I got to apprenticeships and saw what they really were about, I was like, hey, this is the pathway. It bridges that gap from high school, college, outside of educational institutions into the workforce. And what I'm seeing Maryland do, which I'm really impressed with, is they've understood that apprenticeship does have that value that we've talked about a couple of times now. But they also understand you've got to have people, processes, and tools. You got to have those things to make that into a reality. You got to have that infrastructure in place. And that's what I see our partnership really fulfilling is one, understanding how do we bring the right people to bear, the stakeholders from different industries, wherever it may be. And I think we're going to talk about the advisory committee in a bit here, but how do we bring that together? But also, how do we bring those processes and tools to bear so that we can do this in a really efficient, effective manner that we can then scale as well. And I know we're going to get into that a little bit later as well, but that's really what I think the partnership brings to bear is your, quite honestly, already built-in desire, the work you've already put into provide that foundation, and then how do we just take that foundation and again, people, processes, and tools on top of it.
I think also what I've realized, in the time that we've been working together, the short time we've been working together so far, is that we both have a thoughtful and intentional approach to what we do, and I think that is another key thing that makes this work. Is it? I feel like we have a plan, and the plan's going to be in place before we start moving.
No, I love that, Chris, because I'm a big fan of the whole 80-20, right? It's 80% planning, 20% implementation kind of concept. And that's exactly how we've been approaching this. And we are so like-minded on that, which is great, is that let's make sure that we get everything in place so that when we really do launch, we're not figuring it out then. Let's figure it out as much as we can beforehand. Let's launch, and then let's again use I'll reuse those terms, be efficient and effective in how we do things, especially for these employers, because we want them to embrace this as a new workforce pipeline. And if we come out of the gate and we have our stuff together and they see that, and Maryland Apprenticeship Connector has their stuff together, then they're more likely to keep engaging. And then we get to that scalability, and really they're embracing this as a new workforce pipeline model.
Absolutely. So, next question is, what do you see as the key strategic goals for this partnership, and how do you see it impacting Maryland workforce development's landscape?
Yeah, it's very similar to what we were just talking about. I think that we just need to show this the value that apprenticeships bring to these employers. The reality is in employment, HR, no different than anything else. If you've done it a certain way over years and years and years and years, and thousands, hundreds of thousands of employees, the reality is that that burns in, and that's how you do your business. That's how you do your hiring. It's how you do your workforce development. Breaking through that and providing something different, a change, is always difficult, regardless of the industry, regardless of what you're trying to accomplish. And apprenticeship is no different in that. So really, what I want to accomplish in the bigger picture, and I know you share this, Chris, and what Mac does and what they want to accomplish as well, I want to reshape how employers view apprenticeship and how they view it as part of their recruiting efforts, part of their employment development efforts, the whole shebang. I want this to be an integral part of their workforce development and their workforce pipeline. And if we can do that, we've done something big. And I think that what Mac has already done has been really huge in getting that rolling. And we're looking forward to just being part of making that to full fruition.
Yeah, it's a tool, right? It's a
Yes.
tool in the toolbox
Yes.
for career pathing, and that's how as we get a U.S. population that is declining, and we need people to work. There needs to be more ways to get people into work,
Yes.
and apprenticeship, especially in non-traditional sectors, is going to be a key role. And like you said, it's that missing link when you talk about college, when you talk about going into the trades or going right to work after you graduate high school. Like, I think it's that missing piece.
Yeah, and if you look at it too, if you look at the retention rates after 5 years, they're higher by far, almost than anything else that you're going to see as far as a method of hiring. So we know it works long term in that way. We also know that, like you said, it does bridge that gap where I go to college, I get a lot of that academic instruction, but not necessarily that hands-on. So now I'm getting that hands-on as well as additional what we call related technical instruction, or RTI. And it really does. It shows that employee, that person, that apprentice, it shows them that you're investing in them. And the reality is that when someone shows you they're investing in you, you generally want to give that back. And that creates a great employee, and it creates a great relationship between that employee and that employer. So apprenticeship has so many great advantages to it. The process itself lends itself to really building those relationships and that long-term success for the employer and the employee.
Absolutely. So, what do you see? What sectors do you see being prioritized in this partnership, and how do you see apprenticeship program evolving in some of these industries?
Yeah, I think a couple of answers on that. I know that we have talked about the idea of technology is always front of mind. We always, I think we all know that. That's always a big need. That being said, how do you break that down within the technology sector? Cybersecurity is a big need, and a lot of background. I know you all do, and we do as well in that area. But then looking at other things and saying, hey, what are maybe some things that people aren't necessarily going after, so we can fill some of those gaps. I know we've discussed project management, which I think is huge, and it's very cross sector, which is also a very big deal. So you can kind of shape it for whatever sector you want to go into. And then there's some things in the healthcare sector as well, which I think are really needed from a societal standpoint, but also from a job standpoint for people that might not necessarily be ready to go into technology or ready to go into some of these other things that are more suited to that industry. So I think looking at some of the jobs in those sectors, and then I know in Maryland as well, you all are doing a lot of construction up there, which I'm really happy to see. And I think also making sure that we're looking at that sector and leveraging a lot of work that I know you all have, we have as well, in the construction sector in Maryland. I think getting in there with some of these project management roles, with some of these technology roles. So anyway, long story short on that, what I'll say is there's a few different roles that we're looking at, but we're looking at it from a standpoint of how do we identify roles that can go across different sectors, because that's how we're going to be able to really grow this thing. And then as we build out this advisory committee that we'll discuss in a bit, how do we use them to understand more specifically what are those details of those roles that we need to fulfill?
Yeah, absolutely. When you look at the long term success, I think it's going to be really important to have that sort of that cross sector or intersectionality of the roles. Like project management is a great example. And there are so many types of project managers, and they could be in healthcare, they could be in IT, they could be in restaurant, they could be in entertainment, like hospitality. You name it. That's a key skill that is going to be needed across all sectors.
That's right. That's right.
And so let's pivot a little bit and talk little bit about your career counselor platform. So it's a great platform. Can you talk a little bit about how it could be used in tracking and management of apprenticeship programs?
Yeah, so the CT Workforce Your Career Counselor platform, it does a lot of things, and we're happy to say that it's a full-bodied solution to a number of different workforce issues. That being said, for apprenticeship, a few things that it really does that helps them out. One is I mentioned earlier the idea of competencies. So, for the audience, if you look at how an apprenticeship is built, the whole intention of an apprenticeship is I want to learn these skills, these competencies that are related to that job that I'm going to go into. So as you do that, how do we make sure that the persons are attaining these competencies? The Your Career Counselor platform has it built in to where you can do that in a number of different ways, whether that be through me, the mentee, submitting something to my supervisor and saying, this is how I achieved this. I want you to check over it, make sure it's legit, so that now you can say, yep, you did achieve this competency, whether that goes to the trainer or whoever else. As I do take training certifications, bringing them in the system and saying that aligns to certain competencies, knowledge, skills, abilities, so that we can say, yeah, we know you have that because you did these things. So in essence, it becomes a one-stop shopping to where we gather up what that apprentice has done and what they're continuing to do so that we can make sure that they're getting what they need to be successful both within that organization as well as within that role that's in that organization. The other thing I'll mention quickly about your career counselor, which also is embedded in all the apprenticeships that we do, is mentoring. We have what we call technology enabled engagements with mentoring, and we flip the script. We take that mentee, in this case the apprentice, and say, hey, we're going to give you some materials. We're going to give you a structured agenda that you can lead so that now within that platform, you can lead meetings with your supervisor, with your mentor. And as you do that, capture the data you're getting back as they tell you about the technology or the project management or the healthcare, but also as they tell you, hey, if you say it in this way versus say it in that way, if you approach, and you make sure you do this, send these notes afterwards, whatever it is, now they're not just getting that technical skill that they need, but they're also getting those professional and soft skills feedback, which are critical to being successful in any job, wherever that may be. And that's also captured within the system and becomes part of that larger qualifications portfolio that we call it, associated with the apprenticeship. So a lot of great stuff in there. I get excited about it. I'll stop there.
Yeah, it sounds really exciting, and I think it's going to be a great tool for our employers and our apprentices to use. We talked a little bit, we mentioned earlier, establishing an advisory committee. Uh, what will be the committee's role, and how will it contribute to the success of the apprenticeship programs that we're building here?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this advisory committee that we've been working on, and for a couple of reasons. One is if you want people to adopt the things that you're building, then bring them into the process of building it because they're ultimately the ones that are going to be using it. They're the ones that are going to have to, be, eating the caviar, as we like to say. So let's make sure that we bring them and have them understand what the process is and be a part of it. They'll become champions then for within their organizations, but they'll also become champions with other organizations across the state. So that's really important for us. The other thing is too is related to that, of course, is simply they're the ones on the ground doing this. They have the knowledge. They're the we're stakeholders of one sort, but they're a different type of stakeholder entirely. And we need to get that input from them so that we can build a program that will meet their needs, other organizations like them's needs, and so that we can also make sure that we get funding for these efforts. So bringing in those folks as well on the advisory committee, whoever that we need to work with, whoever our stakeholders in ultimately in this apprenticeship and workforce development effort that we're doing, let's bring them to the table. Let's get their input. Let's make sure that we understand what the needs are so that we can deliver a product that is, again, I'm going to use the terms effective, efficient, scalable, those types of things. It's really, really important that we do that. And that 80/20 rule, let's do it up front with this committee and then let's do it ongoing, right?
Absolutely. Put the work in early, and then let things let that work show like over time. Yep, I totally agree with you. So of course, as we've mentioned sort of in passing a couple times, we're really going to need the support of local businesses and industry leaders. So talk to me about how we're going to engage these local leaders and businesses, and what incentives might exist.
Yeah, so I think that what you just said on the last part, the incentives, is one of the things that we need to do. We need to make sure that we catalog, there's federal side, there's a number of incentives that we're aware of. Within Maryland, there's some incentives, and these are financial incentives for both the employer and the apprentice that we can look at. And we need to make sure that we understand what all those are, and we have that at the ready to share with these employers so they understand it. Because quite honestly, if you can make it less expensive for them to engage, they're going to engage more. In addition to that, as far as how we're going to really get the word out on this and do outreach, going back to the advisory committee, they become our champions. So they're going to help us do some of this outreach, both again within their organizations and across other organizations in their sector. I foresee us as well, and I know we've talked about this to some degree, Chris, going to other organizations, whether that be the chambers of commerce, whether that be, whatever it may be, technology councils or whoever, and letting them know about this effort, getting some material, some collateral that we can share with them about this effort, speaking to them as a group about this effort, and really just getting the word out. In fact, what I would say is that what we're doing today is part of the answer of how we're getting the word out and what we're trying to do. And we're going to be doing more of these types of things because this is a really important initiative, not just to Maryland as an economy, as a society. It's important because the people that are going to get these jobs are going to just, be better off. And that really, that infects the whole society, the whole economy in the area. And so that excites me, and I love doing these types of things, and we're going to keep communicating.
Yeah, of course, we'll also let them know how your career counselor can support and make that process just seamless.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, we foresee this as a real long-term effort where we're just getting out of the gate, getting our foundation set, as we've talked about, and then once we do that and we learn more from the advisory committee and our engagements, then we're looking forward to getting into that next phase and that next phase.
Yeah, well, you led right into the next question there, Bobby. Um, Looking beyond the initial implementation phase, what are the long-term plans for scaling this partnership, and do you have any specific milestones that you aim to reach in the next few years?
Yeah, what I would like to say, I want to be careful on the specific milestones simply because I want to make sure that our advisory committee that we're putting together right now, literally, I think one of the final emails is going out today. I want to make sure they have a chance to weigh in, and I don't want to, hamstring them in any way whatsoever. That being said, as far as what the goals are over the next few years, I want us to have a solid infrastructure, a repeatable process with tools that we can deploy. And so that now, instead of focusing, we'll always look at the infrastructure, we'll always make sure that it's in place and does what it needs to do. But we want to really get that settled down as much as possible and then just build on it versus, get it in place so that we can then focus on bringing in more apprentices. Because at the end of the day, that's what it's about. It's not anything more, anything less than how do we get more people into better jobs, into the workforce to support these employers. And that's what I want to see over the next few years. That's really really my goal. And then the other piece of it is, now that we have the infrastructure in place, we're getting apprentices pipeline moving forward. How do we look at pre-apprenticeship? How do we look at some of the other peripheral workforce things that can support workforce development pipeline, that can support the apprenticeship efforts that we're doing in colleges and community colleges, in high schools, wherever it may be? Again, pre-apprenticeship that can do those types of things. And again, getting that infrastructure in place allows us then to spread out a little bit and focus on a couple of other things that will support these efforts.
Yeah, absolutely. So, how do you think apprenticeship program will affect student preparedness in the job market? We talked a little bit about that earlier, and what skills do you think they'll specifically gain by going through these programs?
Yeah, I've had the pleasure to work in the educational sector, workforce and educational sector for probably the last, I don't know, 6, 7 years at a fairly high level, and getting to see across the nation as well what's happening. And one of the things that our students are missing is really, we call it experiential learning in the educational sector, but it's the real world. It's talking to people who've been there, done that. It's working on real projects. It's those types of things. They're getting, I don't want to bash our colleges and universities or our high schools. They're doing a great job of providing foundational education, the academic side of the house, but we need to combine that with something real. And that's what apprenticeships do. Apprenticeships bring together, there's only two components to apprenticeships at the end of the day: on the job training and then your academic instruction, and they should marry together nicely. What apprenticeships do that the academic institutions aren't doing as well now is that on the job training piece. And by doing that, not only do they see how these jobs really are, what they really do, what they're supposed to do, and how people really act in the workforce, but they also now get to build those professional skills of how do I set a meeting, go to a meeting, talk, present, do this thing at a meeting, not in a classroom, but at a meeting. And those soft skills, as well as how do I hold a conversation? How do I make sure I'm not interrupting? How do I make sure that I allow enough breathing room so somebody else can get a word in and talk to me about what they're interested in? So not only does it build those technical skills from a real world, I see how it really works, not just an academic vantage point, but those professional and soft skills are huge, huge things that get built out during an apprenticeship. And it's all structure around it, so we know that it's happening. We know that it's getting done.
Absolutely. And so, just to throw a little love at our, community colleges and colleges, I mean, just because an individual goes into an apprenticeship after high school or does not mean they don't go to college also.
100%,
And
100%.
and so there's been plenty of studies, especially around young men who may not, college right after high school may not be the best solution in terms of their maturity and their readiness, to engage in that. So, there's often a talk of like a year of service or an apprenticeship. So these are all just, I see them as, puzzle pieces that fit together and build a full picture, not necessarily one or the other.
I could not agree with you more, Chris. In fact, what I'll say is that we've had a number of apprentices go through our programs that were in community college or in a 4-year institution, and it complemented, not supplemented, it complemented what they were doing because, again, I keep mentioning there's two pieces to an apprenticeship: on the job training and then that related technical instruction or academic learning that they do. And look, colleges and universities, they're doing, internships, they're doing a number of other things that are great. So again, that's fine, but where they really excel is on that academic instruction piece. So that's half the equation. If you know how to integrate that puzzle piece, as you mentioned, that's half the equation that can go along great with their on the job training. So yeah, I really respect greatly our community colleges, our 4-year institutions, and what they're doing. Let's figure out a way to maximize that for the employers and these employees as well.
Absolutely. And got one more question for you. How can interested individuals or companies get involved?
Yeah, I think, we have a email address. So it's always good to have an email address. So Mac, MAC at CTEWorkforce all one word, no underscores or anything in there. So please feel free, to reach out to that mailbox. It's constantly being monitored. Feel free to reach out to myself as well, Bobby at CTE Workforce. I have no problem with that at all. I want to make sure that what we're doing is we're getting the word out. Again, we're allowing people that want to participate to have some conduit into what we're doing. And this is going to take some time. We're not going to, I don't want us to go so fast that we don't do it right, because sustainability is the key in all of this. And sustainability comes from building a solid foundation, which is what you all, Chris, have already done with Mac. And we're looking just again to build on top of that and just even solidify it a little bit more. So no, I'm excited for where we're at. And yeah, please feel free to reach out. I would suggest the Mac is a better one. You'll get a quicker response. I have somebody dedicated to that mailbox, but again, feel free to reach out to me as well if needed.
Well, thank you, Bobby. I appreciate you taking the time today to educate us on this partnership and how our apprenticeship can help build career pathways for young people and help build employer solutions as well. Thank you, CityBiz viewers, for joining us. Appreciate your time. See you soon.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, CityBiz.